All around us, and yeah, even inside of us, there's this hidden world. It's filled with specialists, survivors, and just absolute masters of adaptation. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain and explore nature's ultimate freeloaders, parasites.
So let me just ask you this, right off the bat. What do you think is nature's most successful survival strategy? Is it the big, scary predator? The peaceful grazer? Well, I'm here to argue it's something way more subtle, and honestly, a lot more common. It's the art of just living off someone else.
And that brings us right to the heart of it, parasitism. Think about it. It's a completely one-sided relationship. The parasite gets everything: food, shelter, a safe place to live. And what does the host get? Well, usually just discomfort, disease, or sometimes way worse. From a pure evolutionary standpoint, it's kind of genius, right? Why waste all that energy hunting when you can just move right into your food source?
So, let's dive in and start breaking down the basic rules of this incredibly successful, if a little unsettling, way of life.
Because to really understand the players, you first got to understand the rules of the game they're all playing. And it really all comes down to hosts, and they're very unwelcomed hitchhikers.
Right. So, here's a crucial point. Not all hosts are the same. You've got what's called the definitive host. Think of this as the parasite's final destination, its ultimate goal. This is where it gets to grow up, become an adult, and reproduce. But then, you also have the intermediate host. This is more like a layover on a long flight. It's just a temporary stop, a place where the parasite hangs out in its younger larval stages before it can get to its final destination.
So how does a parasite even get from that layover to its final destination? Well, a lot of the time, it needs a ride. And that's where a vector comes in. A vector is basically a biological taxi service. It's usually something like a mosquito or a tick that physically carries the parasite from one host to the next. And sometimes it's not just a taxi, it's a crucial part of the parasite's whole life story.
Okay, so we've got the rules down. Now, let's meet some of the most famous or maybe infamous players in our parasite gallery. First up, we've got a real heavyweight, even though it's completely microscopic, Plasmodium. This little single-celled guy, this protozoan, is the tiny organism behind one of the biggest diseases in human history, malaria.
Now, just look at this life cycle. It's this incredible, complex dance between 3 different organisms. It starts when an infected mosquito, that's our vector, bites a human and injects the parasite. The plasmodium then develops inside the human, who's the intermediate host. Then another mosquito comes along, bites that infected person, and picks up the parasite. That mosquito then becomes the definitive host, where the parasite fully matures, ready to start the whole cycle over again. It's wild.
And here's where you see the real-world damage. Different species of Plasmodium cause different kinds of malaria. Plasmodium falciparum, that one's the real killer. It's responsible for the most severe, life-threatening form of the disease. So yeah, this is way more than just a freeloader. It's a microscopic agent of global disease.
Okay, let's move on to our next character. And we are scaling up big time. We're going from a single-celled organism to a multicellular giant that lives inside its host, the tapeworm, from the genus Tania.
I mean, these things are just unbelievable. Their body is long, flat, and segmented, kind of like a piece of tape, and they can grow to be several meters long, all while living inside your intestines. To make sure they don't get flushed out, they anchor themselves to your intestinal wall with a special head called a scolex that's covered in hooks or suckers. Seriously, talk about an unwelcome guest.
Now this picture here, this is actually a roundworm, not a tapeworm, but it gives you a really good and kind of visceral idea of what we mean when we say endoparasite, a parasite that lives inside you. These worms are absolute masters of thriving in that environment.
So, how does someone even get one of these? Well, pretty often, it's through the food we eat. The larval stages of Taenia saginata can be found in beef, and Taenia cilium in pork. If you eat undercooked, infected meat, that's it. The parasite sets up shop in your digestive system, and that leads to some very unpleasant symptoms.
All right, for our final stop in the gallery, let's move from the inside of the body to the outside. Let's talk about the tick, a classic example of an ectoparasite, one that lives and feeds right on the surface of its host. And this right here is why ticks are so dangerous. They're a double threat. First, as an ectoparasite, they latch onto you and feed on your blood. But second, and this is the really big deal, they are incredibly good biological vectors. While they're feeding, they can transmit a whole cocktail of other dangerous things, from the bacteria that cause Lyme disease to all sorts of other nasty parasites.
This really puts it all into perspective. Just look at the company ticks keep. They're in the class Arachnida, right there with mites. And then look over at the insects. You've got mosquitoes, flies, fleas, lice. These guys aren't just annoying pests. They are some of the most important couriers of disease in the entire world.
So, after that quick tour of this unseen world, let's just zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture. What does all of this really mean?
Okay, let's boil it all down. What are the big takeaways here? First, parasitism isn't some weird fluke. It is an incredibly successful survival strategy all across the tree of life. Second, their life cycles can be just mind-bendingly complex, weaving together different hosts and vectors into this intricate web. And finally, from the tiniest protozoa to giant worms, these organisms are a massive force, shaping health and disease all over the planet.
Which, it kind of leaves us with one last pretty wild thought. We tend to think of the big animals, the predators and their prey, as the ones running the show in an ecosystem. When we think about the sheer number of parasites out there and the huge influence they have on the health, the behavior, and even the survival of their hosts, it really makes you wonder, who is really in control?